It was, here's what's happening, and you're going to take it, or else.
The NCAA, the administration, the coaches, they don't actually care about this.
Another example of a woman being excluded in the name of inclusion. Women were excluded on the basis of their terms of inclusion.
Women are respected. It sent the message really loud and clear.
That a man was going to be joining the women's team. To have that infringed upon because of a decision like this, it's a whole nother element. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Gains for Girls podcast. I hope you are watching on youtube.com/OutKick. If you are seeing that I'm wearing my Title IX tee. This is from the Be Bold collection with XXXY Athletics. We had Jen Say on the podcast a few weeks ago to talk about this collection, what it means to collaborate with this brand. Let me move the microphone so you can see. Fantastic. The back has the entire original 37-word statute of Title IX on the back. So you can check that out at thetruthfits.com. But again, I hope you're watching at youtube.com/OutKick. You can like, subscribe. You can comment. I never want you guys to miss an episode. So make sure you're subscribing, share these episodes with your friends. Very excited for today's conversation. Actually, very relevant to the shirt that I'm wearing today. We're talking about Title IX as this is something, of course, that we've talked about at great lengths on this podcast before, but we have another example of a woman being excluded in the name of inclusion, this time at a college. RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology. Really, really crazy stuff. Her story is really remarkable. She has just joined the Gains versus NCAA lawsuit using her full name, which is no easy feat. Even still in the year 2025, you face immense backlash for doing something as simple as saying that men and women are different and that men can't become women and vice versa. But we'll get into that. But before we do, I want to tell you about today's sponsor. It is Cozy Earth. I just got their new cuddle blanket in the mail. I've talked about their sheets. I've talked about their pajamas. I've even talked about their crib sheets for baby girl. If you're watching too, you can probably see my stomach. It's beginning to, I say beginning, I'm in my 35th week now. So we're rounding out, but really every day I wake up and my stomach is bigger than it was the night I went to bed the night before. But I've talked at great lengths about their loungewear, how soft, how comfortable, how their sheets are temperature regulated. I sleep the best I have ever slept in my entire life, even being pregnant, which says something, especially those of you who have been pregnant. You know what it's like. Just how uncomfortable it is to have to do basically like a 5-point turn every time you want to roll over in bed. I sleep so good in my Cozy Earth bamboo sheets, but I just got their new cuddle blanket. I cannot wait for it to get a little bit cooler outside. It's still hot here in Tennessee. It's middle of August, right? So it's hot, humid. I cannot wait for it to get a little cooler to wrap myself up in this blanket. I want you guys to go to CozyEarth.com. You can use my code GAINS, which is GAINES, for 40% off. Again, really, really incredible stuff. They have a 100-night trial, risk-free, plus a 10-year warranty. So if you don't like it, you can send it back, which, take it from me, you will not be doing that. I built my platform on speaking the truth, and that is very true, even when I am talking about Cozy Earth, today's sponsor. So, as I said, we're talking to a female athlete from Rochester Institute of Technology. Her name is Caroline Hill. She recently graduated. Her story, we'll get into it. She's a record breaker. She held several records at RIT. Before her coach, before the NCAA, her athletic director, allowed a man to switch from the men's team to run on the women's team. So all of that and more, make sure you're listening. Check out this interview with Caroline Hill. Well, Caroline, thank you so much for joining the Gains for Girls podcast. I have lots of people on this podcast, people who are, world-leading scientists and congressional members and really incredible people across many different realms. But my favorite people to talk to are just your ordinary, everyday person who has been impacted not by their own choosing, but has so bravely and so courageously chosen to take a stand for what is right, what is righteous, what is fair, what is just. And of course, you are one of those people. So I'm just so grateful for you to be joining the podcast today. Can you start by just introducing yourself and sharing just a little bit about your journey as an athlete, a female athlete, especially at RIT, what track and field has meant to you?
So first of all, hi. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to talk about this. But yeah, my name is Caroline. I just graduated from college at RIT. I ran track all 4 years and was a captain. Um, and I started track when I was 11 years old. So I've been doing it for a long time. I did it with my sister. That was such a great way to build confidence growing up. And so, yeah, I had some success as a young athlete, and it continued on through high school. And that was sort of when I thought, oh, maybe I could do this in college. I went on to win an individual state title in the 200-meter dash. Granted, it was in Vermont, so not the most competitive
Hey,
state,
a state title
but
is a state title. I
right.
mean, that's no joke. That's no joke.
Still, yeah, still, a great achievement in the eyes of many. So that was very exciting. And so I looked at some schools, looked at Division 1 a bit, but Division 3 really felt like the right choice for me personally as an athlete. And so I went on to improve upon my personal best in college, despite the hardships that I endured. So yeah, that's kind of my track and field journey, if you will.
You mentioned some hardships, and you had this awesome op-ed that just came out in the New York Post recently. Obviously, one of those hardships that we will get into, that the nation has now really got to watch kind of unfold from afar. You got to witness that and be personally impacted by that when a man was allowed to join the women's team. But there's another hardship you talk about in this op-ed, and that's being a hearing impaired athlete. And I read this, and there was a couple things that came to mind. Number one, obviously, the challenges that you faced in both training and competing, especially in a sport like track and field, where you're hearing. I mean, that's monumental, especially like when that gun goes, when the beep goes, like your reaction time is everything. So I want you to talk about that. But the second thing that kind of came to my mind when I was reading this was just how awesome it is to have a space for athletes with any sort of impairment to be able to compete and to succeed. And to me, that's what inclusion is, right? Like we've seen this word; it gets thrown around all the time, whether in the form of DEI, obviously, and what you face later on in your collegiate career, what it means to be inclusive. But they've totally misconstrued this word to really it now means like exclusion. Like women were excluded on the basis of their terms of inclusion. But to me, when I read about you having these hearing impairments, that to me is what inclusion in sports looks like. So can you talk about the specific challenges you faced in training and competing as an athlete with hearing impairment?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, something I always loved about sports and track and field specifically for me is that I could just go compete without my hearing being a factor. Of course, there are things such as the starting blocks, and then also the training settings, just being with coaches, having to hear all the little nuances of instructions that are given during practice, or even just side conversations amongst teammates. Um, Missing a lot of that was definitely hard. Just it takes a toll. It can take a toll on your mental health, just confidence. And, I still, it had a lot of positive experiences with teammates, but it's very exhausting. I think a lot of people might not know what that's like, but having to work extra hard to be in the know is something that a lot of people I think take for granted. But yeah, so in a meet, I would have to you know, if in case you're not familiar with how a track meet is organized, um, a lot of times the event is called and you have to, be listening for that. You have to be listening for your lane assignment. A lot of the times the officials can be very abrasive and unforgiving. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. Can you repeat it? And that isn't always taken very well. Um, and so it can cause some extra anxiety at a competition where being focused is so important. And then the starting blocks, I had a few meets where I would be in the starting blocks. I'm a sprinter, so that's how I would start my races. And the official would say, runners on your mark, get set, and then shoot the gun. And there were a few times where I would miss the get set command because my head is down. I'm not able to look at the official. And the times where I missed the command, they wouldn't be wearing a microphone. So I would see the people out of the corner of my eye, I would see the other girls getting set. And I had to put my hand up and stand up and be like, guys, like, I wouldn't say anything, but I'd be like,
Hold on.
it's so awkward just
Right.
standing up. Um, and, it's like, fine, you're allowed to do that, but it still shakes you, you have to be so focused. I'm sure you understand as a high level athlete, any little thing can really mess you up. So, there were some big meets where that happened and it was, debilitating. So yeah,
Yeah,
there's little things people don't consider.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And listening to you talk about that, especially, I think missing out on something as simple as conversations with teammates, whether it's on the track, whether it's in the locker room, like those are oftentimes the places where you form the best bonds. You're able to chat with each other after practice about how hard the set was or how awful your coach was or whatever it is, but you bond in those moments. And so listening to you say that is something that I realize I certainly took for granted. And in knowing really how similar the sport of swimming and track and field are, I can't imagine being on a block where you're right, your head is down, like you're so tense, you have to be like almost locked and loaded when they say take your mark or get set, and then that beep goes, like especially being a sprinter, every single hundredth of a second, uh it matters. So I can't even imagine that, as again that initial hardship you had to overcome to ultimately receive the offers that you did, and then in choosing RIT for college. Can you now walk us through a little bit about what it was like when you first found out that a man was going to be joining the women's team? Was this a man who had previously competed on the men's team? Was this a man who, started right off the bat on the women's team? What did this process look like for you all, especially as women?
It was a little confusing. There wasn't a lot of communication from coaches.
That's
So,
so typical.
right. The way it works for us was we would have a really long preseason leading up to the indoor track season. And my sophomore year, the male athlete started coming to preseason practices, and it was disclosed that he was transitioning and hoping to compete on the women's team. Um, but there were some logistics that didn't allow for that. So I didn't really know what was going on there. I kind of just was like, oh, this isn't gonna be anything, like I just dismissed it. And then the next year, he came back and I still wasn't sure whether, I didn't really realize how real everything was until the first meet of the indoor season when my record got destroyed immediately.
And what
And
event was this, in the 200?
it was the 300. 300
Got it.
was the first race. It's funny, I was supposed to run it that day too, but my coach actually forgot to enter me, which is ridiculous. But so I just had to watch um, as my record just got destroyed. And all these other female athletes also got destroyed in the race that day. And so I remember reacting a lot more strongly than I expected. I had definitely been holding in a lot of emotion about it, and um, and then also seeing the reactions of some of my teammates, being very supportive of the male athlete, and then others coming to me and talking about it, maybe seeing that I was trying not to show it, but I was upset, and so there was immediately from that point forward, there was such a divide amongst the team, and that was heartbreaking because we spent so much time together. It's we all have this common goal of achieving success in track and field as a team, and so it was devastating having our team be split apart like that. And so yeah, that first race was definitely the moment it became really real, and I knew the NCAA, the administration, the coaches don't actually care about this. Women are respected, and so it sent the message really loud and clear that day.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear. I mean, again, I think anyone can understand how fairness is impacted when you allow a man onto a team. I mean, kindergartners really seem to understand this, the difference between men and women physically. But
Literally, yes.
what's really, really hard for someone to understand, unless you've played a sport, especially at the level of which you and I have, is that team dynamic and culture and how important that is to success, and how that is thrown off entirely when you add an element like this. Like, the whole team dynamic is messed up. And then again, that's kind of like another layer of pressure that you have to deal with outside of the competitive side of things, is how to navigate these conversations with people you love, people who you want the best for. You want them to succeed. You imagine they want you to succeed, both personally and as a team. But to have that infringed upon because of a decision like this that would have allowed Schreiner to compete on the women's team, it's a whole nother element. And it's something that I can certainly relate to as well. But I will say, where I would imagine you had many people on your team, especially going to RIT is a relatively liberal college, right?
It's pretty liberal, yeah. Private school, up
Yeah.
north.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that you would have had several teammates who were at least outwardly supportive of Schreiner, but I bet you internally they knew this to be wrong, just as you and I did. But I would imagine there were many who were fearful of saying this out loud. Um,
Absolutely.
in
Yes.
your op-ed, you talk about feeling erased by the NCAA's decision to allow this man to compete on your women's team, and then to have your records broken. How long did this go for? So, and were you were a junior at this point? Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
So this was your junior season. It happened all the way throughout, going into, of course, your senior season. But then at the end of your senior season, in February, I guess, of earlier this year,
Mhm.
the Trump administration, Donald Trump signed an EO, an executive order, basically barring men from participating within any women's sport that receives any sort of federal funding. Ultimately, that would prevent Schreiner from competing on the women's team. The NCAA they released this policy saying that they would fall in compliance with Donald Trump's executive order. What did you see on your team? Because again, Schreiner at this point was still competing. He was still attending practices. Still, again, what was written in the op-ed was still using the women's locker room.
Mhm.
What was that like for you all, especially when you saw publicly the NCAA saying that they were going to follow federal law?
Yeah. Um, so everything was just hearsay amongst our team. There was not any kind of official message given to us by the coaches or the administration. And knowing RIT stance in all of this, and that it's a private university, um, and knowing how things had gone for so long, I was sort of reluctant that anything would even that I thought, "Oh, alright, he's gonna find some way around this," you know? It's having had, this issue go on for so long, I I kind of lost hope that things would improve a little bit, you know, because I didn't wanna build up, "Oh, maybe he won't be on the team,
Right.
and maybe things will go back to the way they were," but I didn't wanna be let down again, so I kind of just, you know, maybe it will work out, maybe it won't. Um, and then so he was making appearances at practice, utilizing our coaches, our facilities, um, and I think kind of sending a message like, "Hey, I'm still here." Um, and
There's nothing you can do about it, you know?
exactly, and the drama still went on, the negativity, all the things that had been going on ever since it started, um, and so it was definitely not as when the rule change happened, obviously, it was a great step in the right direction, but there's a lot more to it, especially at RIT where everything was kind of sheltered and I don't know if controlled is the right word, but the environment was very just eh, different than some people might imagine, I would say.
Yeah, it definitely sounds different than an SEC
Yeah.
college, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but that tends to be the trend, especially where you have universities that have coaches or athletic directors in place that uh, support the idea of putting or the practice of putting men on women's teams. There's not a lot of transparency. There's not a lot of communication. There's certainly no accountability or responsibility. It's like things are done behind closed doors or in secrecy, and you as a woman are expected to just go along with it. Or they tell you to just be kind, be inclusive. His happiness is more important than you winning, right? This is what we hear oftentimes. And in talking about maybe some of those key bad actors and what you face specifically, uh, I know that you had mentioned in one of the pieces that has come out since you so bravely decided to put your name and your face to this, that your athletic director said that Schreiner had less testosterone than some of you women. Uh, I can't imagine this explanation sit very well with you because ultimately what this AD is doing is reducing women down to a testosterone level, which
Yep.
is, again, utter madness and entirely regressive and deeply misogynistic, really.
Mhm. Absolutely. It was so I was baffled by how limiting that statement was, and, you know, also the delivery was so just matter of fact, and there was not really room to counter. It wasn't a discussion, it was just a delivery, um, in that environment, especially when you have a person in a position of power standing in front of the room, in front of all these women, just delivering this message. And yeah, it's baffling that all the other science behind what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a man, was not addressed in the slightest. It was almost like information was being withheld from the women. Um, and so it was very insulting and um, diminishing to hear that.
Yeah. And again, the locker room aspect, just the feelings of being entirely mortified and humiliated, the discomfort, the injustice of being in a locker room setting, whether clothed or not for that matter. This is
Mhm.
like a vulnerable it's a vulnerable environment. Like it's a place of
Absolutely. Yeah.
intimacy. And again, where I can think some of those conversations even that you have in the locker room after practice, before a competition, after a race, whatever it is, it's some of the most like I can picture myself. That's where I would go if I had a terrible race. I was super upset. That's where I would go to cry, be upset.
Right,
That's where I
yeah.
would go to laugh with my friends. Like, it's such an intimate space, but to have
Mhm.
that infringed upon by a man is just a feeling that, again, is pretty hard to put into words. What
Yes.
um what finally led you to going from being anonymous on the lawsuit, again, the Gaines versus NCAA lawsuit, which has been in motion for over a year, just about a year and a half at this point, to now putting your name to it? How has this shift, I guess, really impacted you personally, professionally, and emotionally?
Yeah, so while I was at school still competing, I did join the lawsuit anonymously. Um, and it was definitely out of fear, as much as I hate to say it. I wanted to speak out and give a voice to women who were in a similar situation as me, but the environment that I was in was, in my opinion, not a safe one to do that in. Um, Spending every single day with my teammates, with my coaches, um, on campus, I and it was my last year of school. I wanted to graduate, do well in my classes, do well in my track and field career. Um, and so it was a really tough decision whether or not to be anonymous, at first, but after having graduated, it's it's like, okay, I'm safe. I've left the school. I've left campus. Um, I can speak out now. But it is kind of ridiculous that I would even have to consider being silenced um because of the environment that I was in. That just goes to show um how
Intolerant.
right, exactly,
The other
exactly.
side that claims to be tolerant and accepting
Seriously.
and welcoming and embracing to diverse viewpoints and thoughts, it's really the exact opposite.
Yeah.
So that is something certainly that it's not even just athletes. Like, I think over the past few years, whether it's COVID, whether it's people in professional, like their career settings, whatever it is, self censorship is so real, and you feel like you have to suppress what you say or how you think, and especially on any of the topics that are related to DEI, so you don't offend, so you're not disrespectful, or all the things that we've been conditioned. I mean, myself included. Like, I was
Mhm.
certainly in that same boat as you, and like you said, I'm ashamed to say it. I'm
Mhm.
ashamed to say that um, it took me finding that internal courage to be able to say out loud that men and women are different, but it really does. Especially, again, where you were, where you are now, like, even in the year 2025, uh, it is so incredibly brave to say what you are now saying, to put your name to something so uh, monumental to the future. What I mean, girls like my daughter, who will be born in just a few weeks, the world that they will grow up in. What are you hoping this legal action will achieve for us? And again, I think more importantly, for the next generation of women.
Um, I would say the biggest, so there's obviously, um, hoping to sort of not that it can be undone, but to instill some of the records that have been taken away, or placements at various competitions that have been taken away from so many women as a result of allowing males to compete. Um, but ultimately, in my opinion, it's about respect.
I mean, of calling themselves champions,
Yes.
right? It's something that is only happening one way at this point. Uh, this issue of allowing people to self-identify themselves into whichever category they want to participate in, uh, it's only adversely and negatively impacting women. So totally in regard to not being respected, not having a voice, not having a seat at the table, even listening to
Mhm.
you describe how there were no conversations, there were no discussions, there were no chances for dialogue or discourse or to be able to ask the questions that you all as women certainly had, even your parents, I would imagine, probably had. There was no allowance for that. It was, here's what's happening, and you're going to take it or else.
Mhm.
So to be able to push back on that, to have your records reinstated, I mean, it's a big, big deal to be a
Mhm.
program record holder, and to have that taken from you, really stolen from you. I believe apologies are in order from every institution, every university, every academic setting that has allowed for this to happen. And we've seen some major progress, again, on certainly coming from the Trump administration, how they are pushing back, how they're ultimately withholding federal funds from universities or colleges, whatever it is, that don't adhere to this executive order, to federal law, that federal law being Title IX. So hopefully, this is something that we can put on their radar to watch what's happening at RIT, because as I understand it now, as I've seen in the headlines, this man is still benefiting from women's facilities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we appreciate you, Caroline, in shedding a light on what is happening. Because again, I would imagine there are many, many people who want to, but many who are fearful. Maybe some who are supportive, maybe some who don't understand the implications, just how regressive this really is. But to be able to lend your voice is really impactful. So very grateful for you. I'm excited that you've joined this lawsuit now with your name, and I imagine we will be victorious in this endeavor. I really do.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. It's been great sharing a little bit more about everything, about my experience.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Caroline. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for tuning into the Gains for Girls podcast. If you want to support the lawsuit, the Gains versus NCAA lawsuit that Caroline has now joined, there's about 20 of us, 20 female athletes from various different sports all across the nation on this lawsuit. I want you to go to iconswomen.com. Icons, we had Marcy Smith on not too long ago. She's one of the co-founders of Icons. We've had Kim Jones on before, another co-founder of Icons. They've really been able to support and rally us together as women, as female athletes, to make sure this lawsuit is successful, which I have no doubt in my mind that it will be. So again, iconswomen.com. Again, go to Cozy Earth. Check out their new cuddle blanket. It's the best. CozyEarth.com. You can use my code GAINES, GAINES, for 40% off. And we will see you guys again next week.